The first gray stirrings of dawn found Samwell Tarly awake long before the bugle of the watch. Sleep had slipped away hours earlier, defeated by the restless churn of his thoughts. He sat at the narrow window in his cell above the rookery, quill forgotten in ink, eyes drifting beyond Castle Black's ragged crenellations to the shimmering white plain where the wall caught newborn light. The great curtain of ice looked pale and soft from this distance, almost like a folded sheet. Yet Sam knew its every fracture and crevice held stories older than the realm itself. Most mornings the sight steadied him, reminding him that his doubts were small things beside monuments wrought by giants. But this morning the wall offered no comfort. The letter on the table behind him seemed to pulse in the gloom like a second heartbeat, its black wax unbroken yet already shouting rumors into the dark. There were many secrets in the world, secrets of kings and spells and half-remembered prophecies. Yet none felt as heavy to Sam as the few cramped lines that had crossed half the world to find him in this lonely tower. John would still be asleep, or perhaps pacing the Lord Commander's solar, running fingers through dark hair already touched with premature streaks of silver worry. Sam imagined telling him at breakfast. The shock, the half-smile that said he trusted Sam with anything and dreaded losing him to everything. They had both changed since the first night's watch atop the wall, boys trading stories of lemon cakes and bastardy to keep terror at bay. John had become a man burdened by oaths and crowns of ice. Sam had become something else. Maester in training, raven keeper, reluctant killer of White Walkers. Yet he still felt far too small for the shapes the world tried to pour him into. And now this summons, carried by Raven in the hand of Marwyn, the mage himself, Archmaester of Rumor, whose heavy ring and starry staff marked him as the university's resident heretic. Samwell Tarly, the letter said in a hurried scrawl, "You are required for a voyage of grave importance. Come to Old Town with utmost haste. From there you will sail east, beyond the disputed lands, to the smoking sea. You will step upon the shattered bones of Valyria, seek halls that smolder with buried knowledge, and return with answers the world forgot the day dragons drowned in ash. Trust no one but the shadows of the dead." He had read it once, twice, a dozen times, as if the ink might rearrange itself into common sense. Old Valyria, even hard-ridden sailors flinched from the name. Balon Swan of the Kingsguard called it the Graveyard of Reason. Maesters called it the Smoking Sphinx. Superstitious freefolk swore they had seen crimson wyverns circle its fumes at night. The doom had shattered the peninsula 400 years ago, a chain of cataclysms so fierce they cracked the earth's bones and boiled the sea. The proud freehold, greatest empire 1,000 years in the forging, vanished in a single flaming day. Stone men haunted its margins now, their skin flaking like pale bark. Ships that strayed too near sometimes drifted back bleached and empty, sails hanging like ghost skins. And yet Marwyn wanted Sam, to go there. Not a cadre of seasoned recon knights, not a company of cell sails with swords kissed by fire, but the soft-voiced son of Horn Hill who still felt his father's lash in every sudden shout. Perhaps Marwyn had lost his wits at last. The citadel whispered he had drunk shade of the evening until his tongue turned blue. Yet the letter's seal was true, and the ragged edge where the raven had pecked at it carried the smell of Mersam recalled from Old Town's deeper vaults. The Archmaester's hand, for ill or good, had chosen him. And so the boy who had once preferred songs to swords found himself staring eastward toward a land of broken skies, with only a half-learned maester's chain and a heart prone to trembling. A soft knock tapped at his door. Sam jolted, scattering blotches of ink across blank parchment. "Who?" The door swung open a finger's breadth. Gilly peered in, hair tousled from sleep, babe cradled against her hip. The child, little Sam, though the watch called him child a snow and spear wife in whispers, sucked noisily at his fingers. Gilly's eyes found the letter at once, as if she felt its weight from the corridor. "They sent another?" she asked. Her voice was stronger these days, yet when fear crept in she still sounded like the girl who had climbed the wall on broken feet. Sam managed to smile, though it wavered like a candle near the end of its wick. "Not like before," he said. "This comes from Old Town." Old Town. Gilly stepped inside and closed the door, as though icicles might lean in to eavesdrop. "I thought they were done with you, Sam. They let you wear your chain. Why would they send more ravens?" "It isn't the Citadel proper," Sam admitted, turning the letter so the wax dragon shone in dawnlight. "It's Marwyn." Gilly's brow furrowed. "The Archmaester with the tattoos?" "The same. He studies things most maesters won't." Sam exhaled, feeling the room grow tight. "He wants me to sail to Valyria." Gilly's silence was louder than any scream. Even little Sam paused his sucking to peer at his namesake. Outside, somewhere down the yard, a hammer struck iron in 3 slow beats, marking the changing of the guard. Gilly's eyes glistened as they did on nights she dreamed of Craster's Keep. "Is it safe?" she whispered at last. "No one knows," Sam said, voice thin. "But Marwyn believes there are books still unburned. Spells, maybe. If I can bring them back, perhaps we can understand what happened to the dragons. Why they died, how they might be born stronger." He faltered, sensing how absurd it sounded aloud. Yet the Archmaester's final line seared him. "The long night is only sleeping, and words alone cannot rouse it. Only deeper words, written in fire." Somewhere in the corridors below, footsteps thudded. Men hurrying for the dawn muster. Sam realized time was thinning like sugar stirred in tea. He had to tell John, had to consult Maester Eamon's fragments on Valyrian glyphs, had to pack parchment sealed in waxed leather. But first he had to breathe and hold Gilly and pretend they could still be safe behind walls of ice. He opened his arms. She came, pressing the babe between them. The child mewed, annoyed, then settled, tiny hand clutching Sam's maester chain where it lay incomplete. 6 links. Silver for healing, black iron for ravenry, yellow gold for accounts, copper for history, electrum for the higher mysteries of dragonglass, and 1 fresh pewter link for lore of the Summer Isles. A 7th, steel for smithcraft, waited unfinished. Sam had never been strong with hammers. Marwyn's letter promised he would need none of that in Valyria. Knowledge would be his armor. But as Gilly trembled, Sam wished for a sword anyway. "I will return," he murmured into her hair, tasting salt as dawn flooded through the window, turning the room into a pale ship poised to sail the sky. "I swear it by every god that listens." "And if the gods are listening to other men?" she asked. "Then I will make them hear me." He tried a jesting tone, but it cracked, showing its seams. They stood so until horns blared 3 quick notes, summons to the yard. Sam kissed the crown of little Sam's head, then Gilly's forehead, and left the room feeling each step become part of a path he had never imagined walking. John met him in the corridor leading to the library, cloak half-fastened, eyes red at the rims from sleepless duty. He read the letter in silence, brows knitting, while Sam paced among shelves stacked with moldy campaigns of Aegon the Unworthy. When John looked up, dawn behind him painted silver across his cheeks. "You can refuse," he said. "I think I can't," Sam replied. They spoke little more. Arrangements unfolded like camp followers. Ravens dispatched to Old Town announcing Sam's acceptance. A ship reserved from Bravos under the flag of the Cinnamon Wind. Grant of leave signed by Lord Commander Snow, though John scrawled "Return swift, my friend" in the corner. And a heavy purse from the Night's Watch treasury, coin scarce won but given freely. 1 week later, as a chill wind glided down the shivering sea, Sam Tarly rode south with Gilly and the child in a covered wagon. He would leave them at Horn Hill before sailing on. Randall Tarly might still disown him, but Sam prayed his mother would grant shelter. He could not drag Gilly to seas that smoked. The journey to Old Town felt doubly haunted, once by memories of his father's wrath, and again by storms of prophecy that dogs howled at beyond the riverbanks. Sam read by lantern every night, parsing scrolls for hints. Fragments from Septon Barth speaking of dragons carved of glass hidden in the bowels of Valyria. Maester Theomore's treatise on windworms, scaled leviathans that lived in fire. Lysini logs claiming a silver-haired sorceress once walked the ruins with an orb of living flame. Most scholars dismissed such tales as sailor's froth. Marwyn did not, and Sam, though fearful, felt something in his marrow stir. A hunger for truth that outpaced terror. In Old Town, The Hightower's beacon guided him over midnight waters. The citadel greeted him with wary courtesy, stripping Gilly's hands of calluses with rose oil while they fitted Sam for a new set of robes dyed a solemn smoke gray. Marwyn himself emerged from dark cloisters, massive belly wrapped in chains of every metal, oily tattoos of cobalt and jade swirling over shaven scalp. His eyes gleamed with irreverent amusement. "So the craven killer of others brings himself at last," he boomed, voice rolling like distant thunder. "Come, boy. The world waits on no man's squeamish heart." Sam followed down spiral staircases into crypts lit by green witch lamps. Here, books bound in basilisk hide drooled resin. Here, skulls of wyverns winked within iron cages. Here, a single obsidian candle flickered though no breeze stirred. Marwyn gestured to a stone table etched with concentric glyphs. Upon it lay a map, a wild, snarled tangle of coastlines rendered in red glass paste. At the center, like a spider in its web, glowered the blasted peninsula. A crescent broken into ragged isles lines radiated from its heart, each marked by sigils. Sunflower of Volantis, Serpent of Lys, Diamond of Mantares, and others Sam barely recognized. "See how the old empire still bleeds influence," Marwyn said, tracing a meaty finger over the fractures. "It lies dead, yet its bones shape the world's crooked spine. You will step upon those bones and listen for the whispers trapped in them."
Sam swallowed.
"What if the whisper becomes a scream?" Marwyn's teeth flashed. "Then you will write every syllable before it kills you." Preparations spanned a moon. Sam wrote letters to the Watch, to John, to Gilly, each sealed with his maester's ring. He studied High Valyrian until his dreams filled with words that dripped molten vowels. He learned the names of volcanoes that still roared across the smoking sea. Drogon's Maw, Shadowflame, the Weeping Mountain. He read raven reports of fiery waters that sometimes surged and swallowed whaling ships. Each night he heard the doom again in his sleep, a roar like 1,000 dragons dying. And each morning he woke with resolve tempered by dread. When the cinnamon wind finally unfurled its cinnamon-striped sail under a crescent moon, Sam stepped aboard with his pack of books and the thin stink of brimstone already in his nostrils. Marwyn did not sail. He would wait in Karth with contacts who dealt in relics. Instead he sent 3 companions. Zandacuo of Volantis, a merchant's daughter with eyes like polished jet. Waymar, a silent spearman from the Basilisk Isles whose skin bore scales of grayscale arrested by Magi. And Dernick Pike, a maester expelled for experiments with wildfire who insisted his left hand glowed in the dark after an explosion. A motley crew, Sam thought, yet each carried knowledge beyond his own. The ship slipped through whispering currents. South of the Stepstones, they crossed the jade-tinted currents where summer storms brewed. Xanda taught Sam how to taste salt water and tell whether reefs lurked beneath. Waymar showed him how to bind a knife with tar cloth to resist corrosion. Dernick sang obscene sea shanties in Old Giskery until Sam's ears burned. All the while Sam read, mapping each word upon the seas ahead. He told himself he was ready, that learning could banish fear, that bravery was the sum of many tiny refusals to yield. But at night he watched the horizon glow faintly, a bruise of ember where Valyria waited, and felt the world grow too vast for any map. Weeks slipped by in the cadence of waves. Birds changed, from gulls to sleek green cormorants, then to none at all. The sea darkened, thickening to an inky sheen that clung to the hull like oil. On a windless dusk the lookout shouted, and Sam climbed the swaying rigging, heart thudding. There, far ahead, peaks knifed the sky, black, jagged, exhaling ribbons of crimson smoke. Lightning flickered within the clouds that swaddled them, but no thunder followed, as if sound itself were afraid to trespass. Valyria, the sailors whispered prayers to the many-faced god, to R'hllor, to the storm god, to nameless spirits of wave and bone. Dernick clasped a glass jar full of wildfire, muttering equations of volatile sympathy. Waymar touched the scaled scars on his arms, as though bracing for their return. Xanda only watched the horizon, lips parted, the wind whipping her silvered scarf. Sam felt both lighter and heavier than ever, as if a great hand had lifted him from all he knew and set him upon a scale that would decide more than his own fate. Night fell, but darkness did not. The peaks glimmered red from within, cracks exposing veins of molten iron. The sea hissed where embers skimmed its surface, leaving trails of steam. A hush took the deck. No one spoke when the captain ordered the sails furled. They would drift into the smoking sea at dawn's first breath. Until then, they waited, floating on a mirror that showed only stars above and stars below, as if the world had folded. Sam tried to read, but the words crawled like ants. He stood at the prow instead, scroll in hand, and whispered to John in his mind, "I am here, brother, not brave but trying." He thought of Gilly, of the child, of the wall's white shadow, of books wrapped in oilskin waiting in his cabin. And he thought of the thing buried beneath the world that old tales called the night that never ends. If Valyria still hid anvils where dragonfire was forged into prophecy, Sam would find them. Not for glory, but because someone must. Dawn broke thin and sickly, a pale wound leaking gold. The cinnamon wind drifted between pillars of obsidian that jutted from the sea like fangs, etched with glyphs half-melted. Beyond them rose cliffs of glassy black rock veined with ruby lines that pulsed faintly, as if the land itself still breathed fire. Ash floated on the air, settling on decks in a fine gray snow. The smell was charred copper and rotten eggs. Yet beneath it Sam caught another scent, delicate as rain on dust. Parchment. Books. They anchored in a bay where the shoreline curved like a broken wing. The sea hissed against black sand. Waymar leaped first, spear in hand, boots sinking ankle-deep in volcanic ash. Xanda followed with a spyglass. Dernick clambered down holding his wildfire jar, muttering that flames spoke loudly here. Sam descended last, clutching a satchel of quills and a dagger he barely knew how to use. Ash settled in his curls, turning him pale. He felt the land's heat through his soles, a slow burn, like standing upon the lid of a giant's cauldron. Ruins loomed beyond, towers twisted by unknown heat, their stones warped into flows like wax, plazas strewn with shattered dragon motifs, an aqueduct frozen mid-collapse, arches drooping where limestone had melted. Sam's breath caught, not just at destruction, but at echoes of grandeur. Even broken, the city dwarfed King's Landing, a labyrinth of shadows and red-lit alleys stretching inland until smoke swallowed them. They advanced, leaving tracks that steamed. Sam traced sigils on a fallen obelisk. Tri-headed dragon, rune of wisdom, stylized wildfire glyph for transformation. He sketched them quickly, ink smudging with sweat. Xanda found stairs descending into darkness. Waymar tested each step before allowing Sam to follow. The stairwell opened into a cavernous library whose walls were columns of fused black glass. Shelves of obsidian still held rows of metal cylinders sealed with wax. Sam's hands trembled as he lifted one. It was warm, vibrating faintly. Runes along its rim read, "Dream of Flame, Book 9. He cracked the seal. Instead of parchment, a thin sheet of beaten gold glinted. Etched upon it were Valyrian glyphs that shimmered as if alive, reshaping when his gaze slipped. Sam touched the surface, and a spark leapt, blue and cold, into his palm. Pain flared, then vanished, leaving a tingle that raced up his arm to his skull. For a heartbeat everything smelled of burning cedar, and distant voices sang in a tongue he half understood. When his vision cleared, the cylinder lay at his feet, scroll unfurled. Waymar stood rigid, spear raised, while Xanda stared wide-eyed. Dernick whispered, "We should leave this place," but Sam only knelt, pressing a hand to the cold stone floor, and smiled through tears he did not feel. Because in that brief instant the glyphs had opened like flowers, and he had glimpsed a line of knowledge as bright as dawn. Spells of binding fire into flesh, of weaving stone and scale, of calling light from darkness. Forgotten magic waiting to be read. He rose slowly, cradling the scroll. Gilly's face flashed across his mind, then John's, then Maester Eamon's blind smile. He felt the weight of their hopes and fears, and the thin silver link that always bound him to every life he had saved by simple kindness. That link glowed now, unseen yet real, tying him to the future even as he stood in the ashes of the past. "We stay," he said, voice steady. "No more running." He wiped ash from his cheeks, leaving streaks that looked like war paint. Valyria has not finished speaking. Outside, in the ruined plaza, a breeze rose, a breath from some hidden vent in the earth. It swirled the ash into shapes that almost resembled wings. And far above, lightning flickered again within the smoky crown of the mountains. But this time, Sam thought, the thunder finally answered, rolling low and deep as if welcoming him home. Behind him, Waymar struck torch to pitch. The flame roared skyward, brighter than any torch Sam had ever seen, burning a pure cerulean blue that cast shadows dancing like living things across the library walls. In that blue light, the ancient glyphs pulsed, and Sam felt the first true page of his journey turn. They would read, they would listen, and whatever had slept in the bones of dragons would wake, drawn to the tremble of a gentle maester's heart, daring to believe knowledge itself might save the world. He inhaled the scent of parchment and brimstone, and stepped deeper into the glow. Sam woke the next morning to the hiss of steam and the low, keening hum that had haunted the ruins since their arrival. He had slept barely an hour, slumped against an overturned lectern with parchment still clenched in his fist, and yet the instant his eyes opened, clarity poured through him as if he had been dreaming with his veins instead of his mind. Somewhere in the night, the library's eerie blue torchlight had waned to a sullen ember. But the glyphs etched on golden leaves inside the cylinders still pulsed, alive with secret rhythms. Waymar knelt by the door, motionless except for the slow drift of his breath frosting the bitter air. Xanda dozed with her back to a shelf of fused obsidian tablets. Dernick had crawled into the corner where an ancient writing desk had sagged into slag and now snored loud enough to rattle dust from the ceiling. Sam stretched, joints popping, and allowed himself one heartbeat of quiet wonder that he of all souls, was breathing Valyrian air, a survivor in a place even dragons had ceased to haunt. He rose, careful not to disturb the others, and padded deeper into the stacks. The floor sloped downward, carved from basalt so mirror-smooth it reflected torch glimmer like spilled starlight. Ash formed ripples that clung to his boots, yet heat still radiated through the soles as if some molten artery threaded far beneath. Shelves loomed higher here, and every few steps he passed statues. Tall, imperious figures robed in flames of sculpted glass. Most were cracked or beheaded, but their hands still cradled artifacts. Wands of crystal, blades of black steel feathered with silver, spheres within which tiny firestorms churned. He found himself pausing before each relic, caught between scholarly awe and a child's thrill at forbidden toys. Yet the weight of Marwyn's charge pressed always at the back of his skull. Write what you see, learn what you can, and do not tarry where death may wake. Knowledge before wonder, duty before marvel. He selected 3 cylinders at random, each warm as fresh bread, and tucked them into his satchel. A 4th he cracked open long enough to glimpse the first line of text, just to be certain yesterday's miracle had not been dream stuff. The glyphs twisted in shifting gradients of vermilion and cobalt, each stroke alive, yet this time they did not spark pain when his finger brushed the surface. Instead they thrummed with low music, like a distant choir chanting resonance into the marrow of his bones. He closed the scroll gently, pulse fluttering. What numinous bonds had the Valyrians woven into their script, that even after 4 centuries of ruin its very ink still sang? If tongues bore power, if writing itself could brand reality, perhaps all spells were but sentences too patient to be read in a single breath. Footfalls cracked the silence. Sam turned, half afraid the library itself had grown legs, but it was only Waymar. The basilisk spearman had discarded his leather half-mask, revealing gray-patched skin rough as pumice that glinted in the weak light. He carried his obsidian-tipped spear low, point angled downward in a gesture of uneasy truce with the shadows. "You wander," Waymar rasped, voice like gravel poured through cloth. "Couldn't sleep." Sam patted the satchel. "Too much here to leave unread." Waymar's blank eyes slid toward the nearest statue. "Too much here to wake." Sam managed a rueful nod. "I know, but it's my task. We leave at sunrise." Sunrise hides behind fumes, Waymar reminded him. Time walks crooked in this place. Sam glanced to where a narrow fissure in the ceiling offered a thin view of the sky. The drab light that bled through was neither dawn nor dusk, only that perpetual ember glow that had crowned the mountains when they arrived. Perhaps the spearman was right. He drew a steadying breath. 1 more hour, he promised. Then we gather the others. Waymar grunted assent and melted back into the blue gloom, silent as a shadow cast by moonlight on water. Sam retreated to a stone bench and unfurled parchment, quill hovering. He began to record each rune he recalled from the night before, sketching their shapes in painstaking strokes, scribbling phonetic guesses in the margins. Spell for binding fire. The glyph had curved like twin dragons swallowing each other's tails. Charm of unbreaking, a lattice of diamond knots. Invocation of the second breath, 3 rising strokes pierced by a falling dash. The names came unbidden, as though the language whispered their meanings while he wrote. It frightened him. No book he had read was this generous, but he swallowed fear and let ink chase revelation. 3 pages later, a distant boom rocked dust from the rafters. He looked up, ink blurring as the quill wavered. A second boom followed, closer, and stone grated overhead. From the entry stair, Xanda's shout rang, "Tremor!" Dernick cursed, something glass-shattering. The hum that threaded the ruins rose to a shrill whine. Shelves shuddered, scroll tubes toppling like dominoes. Sam stuffed parchment into his satchel, clutched a cylinder under each arm, and stumbled toward the main hall as the library convulsed. Cracks spider-webbed across the floor. Heat rushed upward. A rank chemical sting, sulfur and rot, filled his nostrils. He burst into the stairwell in time to see Xanda racing up, braids whipping, clutching a bundle of obsidian shards. "Ground is splitting," she gasped. Steam vents erupting in the plaza. Stone men woke. Dernick barreled behind her, one sleeve aflame with green-tinged fire. He smothered it against the wall, leaving a smear of molten residue that hissed. "Damn place bites," he panted, then laughed, half mad. Sam caught sight of Waymar ushering them upward, spear stabbing at something below the stair lip. A cadaverous hand, gray and crusted, clawed for purchase before Waymar hacked it off. The limb tumbled past Sam, leaking black ichor that smoked where it splattered. Stone men indeed, grayscale victims driven feral, exiled to die amid the doom's orphaned lavas. How many lurked in these depths? They gained the surface moments before the stairwell behind them wheezed a gust of scalding vapor that sent masonry shards flying. Outside, the plaza was chaos. Fissures cracked flagstones. Pillars toppled. Vents in the earth belched plumes of ash so dense they obscured the shoreline. Through the choking pall, shapes lurched. Gaunt silhouettes mottled with living stone, eyes weeping black tar. Some crawled, limbs fused. Others shambled with animal hunger. The tremor had awakened an army entombed by their own flesh. Dernick uncorked his wildfire jar and hurled a splash at the nearest pack. Green flame whooshed bright, devouring 3 in a screeching instant, but more poured from every alley. Xanda drew a Volantine shortbow, loosing silver bodkin arrows with ruthless precision. Waymar anchored their flank, spear sweeping in measured arcs that severed limbs and shattered skulls to dust. Sam, heart hammering, rifled for his dagger, then froze as a memory echo surged up his arm, binding fire. He fumbled a scroll tube open, praying the glyphs would answer haste. The gold leaf unfurled. The runes flickered, rippled, realigned. He touched the center glyph and spoke the syllables that shimmered to his mind like rising sparks. Heat roared up his spine, searing but somehow sweet, as if molten glass had replaced his marrow. His hand spat crimson light that coiled into a whip of fire 3 yards long. It lashed forward, carving a wide arc that scored the flagstones and drove the stone men back in panic. Xanda saw and pressed close, her arrows now flaming where they struck. Dernick whooped. Sam held the whip aloft, terrified, exultant, every nerve a conduit for sorcery older than walls and kings. When the nearest wretch lunged, He snapped the whip. It wrapped the creature's neck, burning into rock-like flesh before Sam willed it to shatter. Charred fragments clattered across the plaza, yet power bled from him as quickly as ink from a cracked quill. After a dozen strokes, his vision blurred, ears rang, and he felt himself sway. Waymar caught him by the shoulder. "Enough," the spearman growled. "Fall back to the bay." They retreated through swirling ash. Behind them, the plaza slumped as another fissure yawned. Sam glimpsed a rush of magma roaring up from blackness, swallowing statues in orange gulps. Then they were running down avenues where mosaics of glass turned the ground into knife edges, past crumbled manors where violet tongues of fire licked windowsills, across a bridge of fused bone-white arches that trembled like harp strings under each step. Everywhere, stone men chased, drawn by sound and heat. But the quartet moved swift, Waymar clearing path, Xanda covering rear, Dernick flinging sparing droplets of wildfire to burn choke points.
Sam clutched sečal to chest, Langsro.
He did not dare summon flame again, the edges of his thoughts already frayed into static. At last they reached the bay, yet salvation mocked them. The cinnamon wind was gone. Only part of her mast protruded from the harbor mouth, snapped like a reed, sails smoldering on the water that now bubbled sulfur. A serpentine fissure had ripped the seabed. The ship must have foundered in a geyser of steam. Debris bobbed where the hull had been, crates, tangled rigging, a lone corpse face down.
Sames knees buckled.
Xanda loosed a cry, neither word nor wail. Before despair could claim them, the sea itself heaved. A dark shape rose, wide as a hillock. The cinnamon wind's keel perched on a churning vent, hull half intact, held up by escaping vapor. Ropes dangled like kelp. Crew scrambled across tilting deck, alive after all. Captain Casaro waved frantically for them to board. But the fissure separating shore and ship spat jets of boiling water 10 feet high. No boat could cross that. Sam's heart pounded. "Bridge!" he gasped, mind clawing for possibility. He fumbled parchment, eyes skimming glyphs for structure, cohesion. Invocation of the second breath, a design of rising lines stitched by a single downward stroke. He recalled its whisper, "Weave what is broken, knit stone to stone. Breathe second life into the fragment." Yes, it might work, or kill them all. But time offered no other mercy. He knelt, spread the parchment on ash, and drew charcoal through each glyph, repeating cadence like prayer. Waymar planted spear, but beside him, guarding. Xanda pulled a length of knotted silk rope from her pack. Dernick readied a fresh jar of wildfire for distraction. Sam finished the sigil, pressed both palms to its heart, and spoke the shape of the spell in high Valyrian syllables that tasted of blood and iodine. Earth shivered. The fissure's lip groaned, edges liquefying into glowing slag. A stench of scorched iron filled the air. Then, unbelievably, a ribbon of cooled rock surged outward from beneath Sam's hands, flowing over the gap like water turned to stone in mid-pour. It met the shattered hull of the cinnamon wind, fusing into her rail. A narrow causeway, molten then hardening to obsidian glass, spanned the gulf, slick, uneven but real. The roar of the vent waned as stone sealed its mouth. Steam billowed one last sigh, then faded. Sam toppled onto his side, drained. The world spun, but he felt Waymar haul him upright. Xanda dashed first across the glass bridge, light on her feet. Dernick followed, clutching the satchel Sam thrust upon him. Waymar half-carried Sam last, each step sending a shudder of latent heat through their boots. Behind them, the stone men reached the shore, but hissed, recoiling from the still-glowing causeway. Perhaps the spell repelled corruption, or perhaps the heat alone deterred them. Sam spared no breath to ponder. They staggered onto the deck where sailors hauled them up. The bridge cracked, sagged, then broke, falling in red shards that sank into the bubbling tide. The fissure reopened, devouring its newborn bandage in a plume of scalding spray. But the ship now floated free, though her timbers groaned. Captain Casaro, turban askew and face streaked with soot, ordered sails trimmed the instant Sam's boots hit wet planks. "Valyria rejects us," he barked, voice shaking. Wind or no wind, we flee. Crew unfurled what canvas remained unburnt. Oars splashed where deckhands manned longboats lashed alongside, straining to tow the crippled vessel past a new reef of jagged glass that jutted like dragon teeth. Sam slumped against the forecastle rail. His vision tunneled, but adrenaline kept him upright. He watched the ruins recede, each convulsion of earth casting fresh pillars of fire sky-high, ash clouds blooming like black roses. Screams of stone men dwindled into the general roar until they were only pale dots clawing the shore. The city shrank, yet in his mind its weight loomed heavier than mountains. Inside his satchel were 6 golden scroll leaves and rubbings of glyphs that defied sanity. Was it enough? Could any amount of arcane lore justify the lives risked? He touched the satchel's flap as though it were a heating stone and whispered silent thanks and silent apology to all who would never leave those shores. The ship limped beyond sight of land before dusk found them, anchoring in comparatively calm waters still streaked with sulphurous sheen. Ship's carpenters hammered patches over hull wounds. Sailors sluiced decks to clear ash. Casaro set a watch at bow and stern for krakens or phantom dragons. But no beast came. Perhaps Valyria's own nightmares were prison enough.
Some slept, dreamless.
He woke to a hush broken only by water licking hull planks. Moonlight silvered the deck. His limbs ached, yet a pulse of gentle heat still ran under his skin, relic of the binding flame he had wielded. He found Xanda on the quarterdeck, gazing east where a faint red glow lingered beyond the horizon. She did not turn when he joined her. Night cannot swallow that land, she murmured. Even the moons fear it. Sam followed her gaze. The glow looked small now, like a dying coal, yet he knew scale lied. The firestorms were merely distant, dwarfed by miles of sea. What do you make of yesterday? He asked softly. I make that you, soft-voiced maester, carry a tempest in your quill. She smiled, but sadness shadowed her eyes. I saw kings burn Volantis for less power than you wielded there. I didn't wield it, Sam protested. I borrowed it. The scroll did the work. Quill, whip, tool and wielder become one. She touched the satchel at his side. Be wary your ink does not write you, Samwell Tarly. He swallowed. I only want to help. If these spells can save Westeros from winter, then Valyria's ghosts may demand payment. Waymar emerged from below, pacing light, as though seeking conversation yet reluctant to intrude. Sam waved him over. The spearman inclined his head in greeting, face unreadable as ever. Crew whispers, Waymar said. They fear second doom follows.
Some flinched.
Is the captain still set on waiting until sunrise? He fears reefs. Night hides tricks. Better to mend ship, chart stars. Xanda drummed fingers on the rail. Better to outrun curses, she muttered. Waymar's stare drifted toward her, and Sam felt tension ripple. A silent battle between caution and desperation. He cleared his throat. If we can't sail yet, he offered, let us examine what I took. We'll be safer understanding than fearing. Waymar nodded once. Xanda hesitated, then gestured. Lead on. They gathered in the captain's cabin, granted by Casaro for the night. A single lantern cast honey-yellow light on scarred teak walls. Sam laid the scroll leaves on the table. Dernick arrived last, arm-bound where shards had nicked him, bruised but smiling. He produced 2 small vials of vivid indigo powder he had scavenged. Spell salt, he declared, though no one knew its function. Captain Casaro joined them briefly, crossing arms, listening to Sam's explanation, then left muttering prayers. Sam unfurled the first leaf again, binding fire. He traced the serpentine glyphs, feeling their warmth seep into fingertips. When he closed his eyes, he saw not flames but luminous threads weaving through a loom of night, each thread a syllable, each syllable part of an ever larger tapestry. He sensed if he pulled too hard the weave would unravel. Moderation, he reminded himself. Power is river. Vessel must shape flow, not break. The second leaf revealed sigils for word of adamant. a shield spell designed to harden flesh as stone for 7 heartbeats. Ideal for escaping a dragon's bite, the small Valyrian marginalia suggested. Sam pictured Waymar facing a wyvern, skin briefly unbreakable. It might save them, but 8 heartbeats later, what then? Limits were carved into every miracle. The third leaf, written in a different hand, delicate, almost playful, outlined sequences for waking dream, a communion between reader and the memory of places, a talent to see echoes of ancient events when stepping upon their remnants.
Same skin prickout.
Perhaps that was what he had felt when the scroll first sparked, a glimpse through time's shutter. If he mastered it, he could witness Valyria before the doom, maybe even discern what chain of errors ignited catastrophe. Knowledge beyond books, history spoken by ghosts. He sensed destiny tugging. Xanda poured strong wine for all. They drank sparingly while Sam read. Hours slipped. Outside, rigging creaked. Dernick ground his indigo powder, mixing a pinch with pitch on a splinter of driftwood and lighting it. Blue flame flared, then danced with green tongues where wildfire still clung under his nails. He cackled softly until Waymar glared. As dawn's first tarnished glow bled through portholes, Sam's voice cracked from translation. He leaned back. "We have 3 more leaves yet untouched," he said. But already these spells could change wars. He imagined knights clad in word of adamant, archers loosing arrows wreathed in binding fire. But he forced the thought aside, ashamed. Magic's worth lay not in death but in survival. If winter's horrors marched, white walkers, whites, perhaps living flame, not dragonfire alone, could stand against them. Xanda set her cup down, eyes gleaming. "Suppose we turn back now," she said quietly. "Take these leaves to Karth, to Marwyn. Let grown mages toy with them." Sam felt the ship tilt with swell as if echoing her suggestion. His body longed to agree, to flee the peninsula's rage, to deliver knowledge into safer hands, to return to Gilly before seasons changed. But deeper within, something steadied. A line of resolve drawn months ago by John's trust, by newborn faith in his own capacity to change story's course. "Not yet," he said. "I glimpsed only one fragment of the library. There may be hundreds more scrolls, perhaps intact tomes sealed in vaults deeper still. And I have questions no one else can answer. Why did Valyria's spells fail the day of the doom? If we understand that fault, we might prevent another." Dernick snorted, half-cough. "Prevent?
Man proposes, Gotsrost."
Best to harness what sparks remain and pray they don't backfire. "Knowledge is never cursed by itself," Sam insisted, though doubt stirred. "It's what we choose thereafter." He looked around the table. "Yesterday I wielded binding fire without burning us. We crossed molten earth because of a spell I barely knew. Imagine what we can accomplish with time to learn properly." Waymar considered, fingers tracing scarred skin on his forearm. "City spawns monsters," he said, "yet scrolls shield us. Balance." He nodded toward Sam. "We return one more foray, but at dawn. Crew repairs ship while we search. If city erupts again, we flee." Xanda exhaled. "Very well. 3 hours ashore."
Nodalin.
She met Sam's gaze, half stern, half resigned. "Lead scholar, we follow your quill." Sam's heart thumped at the honor and burden. He closed the scroll leaves, bound them in oilskin, tucked them safe. Silence fell, punctuated by waves and distant thunder from unseen volcanoes. He felt exhaustion wrap him like a cold cloak, yet within it embers glowed. Tomorrow he would walk again through ash and ruin, guided by words brighter than sunrise. Tomorrow he LD begged the library to yield more of its hoarded light, even as its foundations crumbled. He rose, shoulders aching, and stepped onto deck as gray dawn paled the sea. The red smear on the horizon flared anew, painting clouds the color of bruised roses. For a moment Sam fancied he saw shapes within the glow, winged, immense, wheeling above mountains. Illusion, he told himself, but the glyphs beneath his tunic vibrated warm, as though welcoming kin. He thought of Maester Eamon's old dream that dragons would return when the world needed wonder. Perhaps the world needed more than wonder now. Perhaps it needed memory and the humility to wield it. He gripped the rail until knuckles whitened. Far below, seaweed drifted around floating embers from the prior night's vent. Each ember sparked, guttered, went dark, but never quite died. Always a coal within, waiting. Sam nodded to himself, and, for the first time since leaving Castle Black, felt weight and purpose join in harmony rather than conflict. Behind him the crew prepared longboats, patching holes with tar, readying oars. Xanda strapped knives to her calves. Waymar tested spearhead against rail, a dull thunk. Dernick hummed, stuffing pockets with vials that glimmered like shards of aurora. Sam tightened satchel straps and checked his small dagger. It felt comically inadequate beside spells etched on golden leaves. Yet he kept it. Tools mundane and magical alike had their place. By the hour when sun would conquer night in gentler lands, they rowed again toward the peninsula's soot-black shore, each stroke splashing water too warm for dawn. Steam hugged waves. Toxic fumes stung eyes. They wore damp cloths over mouths, smeared pine tar beneath nostrils to mask stench. No stone men greeted them. Perhaps the tremor had swallowed them, or they lurked still. Ruins ahead loomed darker, like silhouettes cut from the world's skin. Sam's heartbeat drummed the tempo of oars. He whispered a line of high Valyrian from Waking Dream, hoping it would attune his senses, and a hush fell within him. Even the splash of water receded. He felt the whole city breathe, heard basalt groan beneath his boat, smelled not sulfur but old parchment again, and beyond that, something else. Copper and tears, blood memory. They landed where a slanted colonnade offered shortcut into the library quarter. Ash puffed beneath boots. Sam led, but soon paused, drawn by vibrations underfoot, subtle as lute strings thrummed softly. He knelt, pressed palm to ground, and the city unfurled across his inner sight. Avenues alive with pale-skinned scholars draped in crimson, carrying lanterns of floating fire, wyverns harnessed to palanquins, children chasing sapphire butterflies that trailed sparks. He saw the great library whole, obsidian walls overlaid with runic light, and at its heart a spiral stair descending not into catacombs but into a living forge where sages hammered ideas upon anvils of thunder. It dazzled him. A hand on his shoulder pulled him back. "Waymar, you walk in dream," he said. "Wake." Stone men clustered ahead, silent, crouched. But they did not attack. They faced away as though enthralled.
Some blinked, focusing.
Past them, within a courtyard haloed by glowing fissures, a shard of crystal stood tower-tall, half-buried, radiating pulses of opalescent light. Each pulse lulled the stone men like slaves to a forgotten bell. Sam realized this obelisk must be a memory engine, a relic that recorded the very visions he had tasted. Magic still spilled from it, even cracked. If harnessed, it could share history with any willing mind. But fissures encircled it, spewing molten rivulets, and the stone men thronged thick. Xanda hissed a curse. "Can't reach," she judged. Dernick rolled a vial in his palm, itching. Waymar weighed spear. Sam considered. Word of adamant might let one cross the fissure unburnt for 7 heartbeats, but retrieving a fragment alone would take longer. Binding fire could clear stone men but risked shattering the crystal. No ideal choice, yet he felt destiny clutch his collar. This obelisk held answers beyond any scroll. "I'll go," he said. Protests rose, but he cut them off. "I can read its pulse. Maybe calm it. Let me try." He unfurled word of adamant leaf, spoke glyphs softly. His skin tingled, hardened like smooth marble. Breath quickened. 7 heartbeats, Waymar reminded.
Sam nodded.
He sprinted. Step 1, fissure edge, heat lancing calves. 2, leap, molten stream beneath, air blistered cheeks. 3, land among thrall. Stone men turned sluggishly, as if moving through tar. He pushed through, adamant coating repelling claw on shoulder. 4, reached obelisk. Light swelled, bathing him. 5, he placed palm on cool facet. Word of adamant faded early, pulse 6 lost. skin prickling raw. He inhaled dream syllables. Ritza's island, remember us. Light dimmed, steadying. Stone men sagged, free of trance. Sam traced a hairline crack, and at his gesture a palm-sized shard slid loose, weightless, gleaming with shifting memories. Heartbeat 7 passed. Heat struck his soles. The fissure gurgled. Stone men shrieked, frenzy reborn.
Sam span, spotted Weimer lifting spear.
Xanda notched arrow. He ran, adamant gone, but adrenaline lent wings. He hurdled a corpse, skirted lava tongues, felt claws rake cloak, ruins blurred. At Fisher he leapt, heels clipping edge, but Waymar's spear but hammered ground before him, offering brace. Sam grabbed, swung across, landing hard. Crystal shard safe. Dernick lobbed vial. Violet smoke erupted, choking pursuers. They scrambled for higher ground, retreating the way they came. Sam's lungs burned. Hands tingled where crystal lay warm. A swirl of images spun within. Dragons birthing in magma, Valyrian children singing in tongues of light, smiths forging swords that whispered, knowledge incarnate. When they reached the longboats, sailors gaped at the shard. Sam wrapped it in felt. Home, he rasped. Now. No one argued. They rowed hard, leaving the peninsula shrinking once more behind steam and sorrow. A final rumble shook the air. A pillar of fire climbed skyward, but the obelisk's pulse in Sam's pack beat calm, as if content to be born into new days. On deck hours later, Sam sat beneath tattered sail, writing until fingers cramped. He recorded each spell leaf, each vision, each tremor of sorcery he sensed in the shard. Ink pooled, but he did not pause. West awaited winter's teeth. East might yet birth storms. South and north and all between needed tales forged of truth, not legend. He would deliver them, and if ghosts of Valyria demanded price, he would pay in sweat and will before ever in blood. Night deepened. Stars shimmered high, unclouded here. Sam closed his book, spine aching, and allowed himself one sigh of weariness. Then he rose, crystal shard glowing faint within his cloak, and walked bowward, where sea and sky stitched a single dark tapestry. He whispered to it words he did not fully grasp, tones of ancient Valyrian that meant hope, hearth, memory. The shard answered with a thrumming light. Samwell Tarly smiled into wind thick with salt but free of ash. The library still burned behind him, yet its knowledge now sailed ahead. Whether 5 scrolls and a sliver of crystal could shift fate he did not know, but he felt the world tilt, subtle, momentous, as if history had inhaled, preparing to speak anew through the voice of a gentle maester from the wall who once feared his own shadow. He was still afraid and likely always would be, but fear had ceased to rule him. Words did that now, bright and terrible and profoundly alive. And somewhere beneath the deck, wrapped in oilskin, those words pulsed like newborn dragon hearts, waiting for the day they would take flight. The cinnamon wind drifted westward beneath a bruised sky, her patched sails mottled as though stained by passing clouds of ash that still trailed behind the peninsula. For 2 days the winds would not rouse, and so the crew worked the oars in relays, the hull groaning with every pull, while Sam hunched on the middeck between bundled coils of rope and wrote until the bones of his fingers locked like rusted hinges. Ink spattered the corners of his robes. Flecks of gray ash clung to sleeves no matter how often he brushed them away. Xanda moved gracefully among the sailors, translating Casaro's shouted Volantine commands into a dozen tongues as needed, though she paused now and again to glance at Sam, eyes bright with a mixture of caution and curiosity. Waymar stood sentinel at the starboard rail from dawn until moonrise, spear haft lashed to forearm with tar-stiffened leather. The only time he sat was to sharpen the obsidian head with a whetstone that sang a low, rhythmic hiss. Even Dernick, usually easily bored, busied himself over a squat brazier near the stern. Heating small shards of green crystal until they sweated iridescent beads, he captured in glass vials and stoppered with wax. Sam wrote. He captured every fragment of memory bestowed by the crystal, snatches of Valyrian conversations overheard in dreams, formulas that danced like living geometry behind his eyelids, half-formed diagrams of furnaces whose flames curled in double helixes the color of peacock throats. Whenever Quill slowed, the crystal shard, wrapped now in oiled cloth and resting inside a walnut box at his feet, thrummed faintly, nudging more recollections to the surface. The memories did not always feel like his own. Sometimes he was a tall woman in robes of molten gold, descending a staircase of glass to address an assembly of dragon lords. Sometimes he was a child marveling at a tiny whip of liquid fire no longer than a finger. Often the visions ended abruptly in a roar or flash of light, and Sam would jerk awake from a daze to find ink pooling at the page's edge. On the third morning after their escape, clouds thickened into a mottled ceiling of lead, and wind finally swelled the sails. But with it came a faint metallic tang in the air that set ship's cats yowling. Casaro doubled the watch and ordered every man to lash personal gear to the bulkheads. The deck pitched as if the ship had run aground on a living beast, and the sea ahead darkened from slate to black glass. Sam climbed the forward ladder, gripping splintered rungs, and peered past the pulpit. A shimmering band of water lay ahead, strangely calm, yet within its reflection the sky's clouds swirled in countermotion, like ink stirred in a bowl. Waymar joined him, silent as always. "It's too still," Sam muttered, trying to recall passages about phantom currents. His hand drifted toward the shard's box, then thought better. Drawing power untested when half the crew were already on edge seemed folly. The prow nosed into the mirrored current, and immediately the sea fell away beneath them. The wind's keel hung suspended as though cresting a vast, invisible wave. Sailors cried out. In the hush that followed, Sam felt pressure build inside his ears. He looked down and realized the water no longer held a coherent reflection. Instead, scenes rippled across it. A molten volcano in miniature, exploding in silence. A procession of armored elephants marching across green plains. A narrow street of bravos at dusk, lanterns flickering within narrow windows. Each image lasted a breath, then slid aside for another. A memory stream, alive beneath the keel. A hollow boom echoed off the bow. Sam saw Waymar flinch for the first time. Beneath the glassy surface, shapes larger than whales began to glide, luminous outlines of dragons whose wings stretched beyond the field of vision. Though translucent, their wake churned real froth. The cinnamon wind lurched sideways, nearly capsizing. Sam's hand went again to the shard. His fingers brushed wood, and though still boxed, the crystal pulsed, sending a tingle up his arm. An image blossomed behind his eyelids. Anchors of pure sound cast like nets to tame restless memories. He snapped open his journal, sketched the sigil with frantic strokes, and tried the incantation in a trembling whisper. Hadar Pigagon Lenton, a cradle for wandering waters. The sea shuddered. Milk-pale ripples radiated from the hull, meeting the mirrored current and forcing the phantoms back beneath the visible layer. The dragons faded into silhouettes, then into faint motes floating like dust in sunbeam. The keel settled, sails snapped full. When Sam opened his eyes, the water looked merely dark again. Crew erupted in whoops of wonder and relief. Casaro shouted that the maester had bound the devil water. Sam sank to the deck, heart thundering, half exhilarated, half terrified at how instinctively he'd wielded a power barely understood. That night, wind remained steady, but the storm clouds thickened. Dernick claimed atmospheric flux of the smoking sea often birthed illusions far from shore. Memory ponds, he called them, where the barrier between past and present ran thin. Xanda frowned, clearly uneasy that so many unknowns lay hidden even in open water. Waymar simply tapped his spear but twice and returned to his vigil. Sam lay sleepless in the cramped passenger cabin, mental images flickering like candle moths. He thought of John at Castle Black, steel wrapped in quiet melancholy, facing an enemy none could see yet. He thought of Gilly and little Sam at Horn Hill, pictured soft sunrise spilling over apple orchards. Every mile he drifted farther from them. But knowledge was a sword, Maester Eamon used to say. Wield it wisely lest it cleave the hand that holds it. Sam swore he would return, chain heavier, heart surer. On the seventh day, land appeared on the starboard horizon. 3 jagged spires of basalt surrounded by mist wreath, the tallest crowned by an ancient beacon now long extinguished. The charts named it Ember Point, once a way station for Valyrian fishing vessels. Abandoned since the doom save by storm petrels and smugglers, Cassaro meant only to skirt it, but at mid-morn a moaning gust tore a forward sail from yardarm to tack. Canvas thrashed, lines snapped, the mast threatened to shear. With main propulsion crippled, the captain opted to anchor in Ember Point's lee and make repairs. The wind crept into the sheltered cove by dusk. Sulfur reek lingered faint yet tolerable, and the beach glittered black and red where volcanic glass mixed with coarse sand. Sam, Waymar, Xanda, and Dernick put ashore with a detail of 6 sailors to hunt for fresh water and timber. Half the men muttered prayers, the other half sharpened knives. The island's interior rose quickly into steep ridges tufted with wiry grass. Between ribs of rock, narrow gullies funneled warm drafts carrying flurries of scalded insects. Twice Sam spotted stone figures slumped against boulders, but closer inspection showed merely abandoned statues, weather-worn effigies of dragons not unlike those littering the peninsula's coast. No sign of habitation. They split at a fork. Xanda and 3 sailors followed a trickling rill inland. Waymar, Dernick, and Sam climbed the ridge to scout for timber. The ascent proved grueling. Footing shifted, and occasionally Sam had to scramble on hands and knees. The shard vibrated each time his palms contacted rock, as though resonating with some buried frequency. Atop the ridge the world opened. The cove below glowed in moonlight like a spilled vial of quicksilver. Beyond, the cinnamon wind lay at anchor, lanterns bobbing on deck. A faint ember glow still stained the eastern horizon, distant fires of Valyria. But Sam's attention fixed on a solitary tree some 100 paces farther along the crest. A withered thing, yet its bark shimmered crimson and leaves hung glossy black. Timber enough for spars, perhaps. They approached. Waymar motioned for silence. Dernick sniffed, brow furrowed, then produced a small vial of his blue-green resin. Sam reached out to touch the bark. Heat radiated, yet the surface wept beads of clear sap cool as dew. The tree pulsed faintly, and Sam's breath caught. Within its trunk lay a pattern of glyphs swirling like those on the golden leaves. "It's alive with spell wood," Dernick whispered, reverent. "Heart grown in Dragonfire Forge, rare as snow in Dorne." Sam considered. If sap carried magic, perhaps it could preserve sails against flame, or mend hull cracks. Yet he felt reluctant to wound such a marvel. The shard at his belt throbbed again. Warning? Permission? He could not tell. Waymar circled the trunk, searching for natural deadfall. On the far side he halted. Sam joined him and saw a hollow at the tree's base, large enough to crawl within. Inside glimmered scattered bones, bleached but intact. Goat, perhaps, or pig, hard to judge. But amid them lay a slender cylinder of obsidian sealed with bronze caps.
Same spals reist.
Another Valyrian scroll hidden miles from the peninsula? How? He reached, but Waymar caught his wrist. "Trap," he said simply. The spearman pointed. A faint sheen of dried sap circled the cylinder. Dernick crouched, scraped the sheen with a bronze knife. The film sparked, sizzling into an amber smoke that rose straight up despite breeze. "Alchemical alarm," Dernick confirmed. "Tendrils to roots. Disturb and tree likely detonates." Sam stepped back, exhaling. So the tree itself formed a living safe. Axing it now would be folly. But could he disarm the ward? He knelt and studied the bronze cap. Embossed with a stylized flame forging a chain of 7 links, identical to one of the glyphs scribbled in his notes. Binding of memory to wood. He recalled a counterglyph scribbled in margins. Unlace of root bond. If sung correctly, sap would relax, releasing held object without harm. But the tune in memory was incomplete. He needed reference. He fumbled journal pages. The shard brightened, projecting faint runic lines over parchment. Completion of the missing stave.
Some cleared throat, hushed.
He sang, the melody barely more than a hum, valleys and peaks in a language older than harps. Sap beneath his palm warmed, softened. The bronze cap rotated of its own accord, clicking 4 times. Waymar's spear hovered over his shoulder, but nothing flared. Sam slid the cylinder free. Sap parted like curtain, then resealed. The tree gave a sigh of breathy wind, then stilled. A thrill flashed through Sam. Pride at precise magic, tempered by awe of forces at play. He promised the tree silently he would put knowledge to worthy use. Sudden shouts echoed from lower slope. Xanda's voice, sharp with alarm. Waymar vaulted downhill. Sam pocketed the cylinder and followed. They found Xanda and her men near the streambed they tracked inland, crouched behind boulders. Across the clearing, a serpent-shaped creature, part lizard, part eel, slithered through reeds, 6 legs churning mud. Its hide shimmered translucent, bones visible beneath skin like glowing embers. Its elongated head bore glassy fangs, and from gill slits along neck poured acrid steam.
Acheatrem, Sam realized.
Rare spawn of volcanic isles, harmless at distance, but its breath scalded flesh. The sailors aimed crossbows. Xanda gestured caution. Their quarrels might crack the beast's hide, releasing jets of boiling vapor. Waymar advanced alone, spear leveled. Sam gripped dagger, useless at range. Dernick rummaged for wildfire vial, but wind shifted, carrying fumes their way. Sam's mind raced. Word of adamant could shield Waymar for a few heartbeats, but fire would only enrage the beast. Waking dream, perhaps he could calm it by echoing past lullabies of its species? He touched shard, sought memory of heatworms, but only fragments emerged. Images of Valyrian handlers waving fans of obsidian slats inscribed with spiral sigils. Not helpful. Waymar lunged. The spear tip plunged behind the WRM's skull. The creature shrieked, steam blastin'. Waymar's cloak blackened, flesh beneath surely scalded, yet he held fast. Sam willed adamant but lacked breath for incantation. Then Xanda fired. Her silver arrow punched into the WRM's eye, anchoring it long enough for Waymar to wrench spear clearer through the far side. The beast collapsed, tail thrashing. Steam dispersed. Waymar staggered back, cloak smoking. Sam reached him, burns blistered along forearm. He recited a healing charm, simple maester's prayer, mundane yet earnest, and wrapped the arm with laudanum-soaked cloth. Waymar nodded thanks, pain etched deep yet unvoiced. They harvested the WRM scales, thin plates iridescent as mother of pearl yet hot to touch, and the oily mucus within gill slits, prized as salve for frostbite. Xanda filled waterskins from clearing spring, fortunately upstream of the fight. Back aboard by dawn, Casaro reported mast patched, sail retacked. Sam secured the new cylinder in chest with gold leaves. He felt weight of secrets growing, like pebbles in a sling. Too many and the sling might snap. The next days passed under clear skies. They skirted the Basilisk Isles, avoiding slaver galleys, crossed paths with a Tyroshi spice barge whose captain traded cinnamon sticks for a flask of heatworm oil to cure his helmsman's frost-numbed toes. He claimed, though Sam doubted the crew of any summer vessel suffered cold. Finally, Cartha's towering triple walls shimmered on the horizon, white against desert. Marwyn awaited them not at harbor, but in a small cove beneath the shadow of the city's opal-tiled domes. He arrived aboard a squat barge lashed to gilded seahorses, tattoos swirling over scalp freshly oiled. When Sam stepped onto the gangplank, the Archmaester's grin split beard like a canyon. "Return alive," Marwyn boomed. "Better than odds." His gaze fell to the walnut box hugged tight in Sam's arms. "Even better, you bring the fire still beating." Sam tipped the lid enough to reveal the crystal's muted glow. Marwyn inhaled, eyes gleaming. "Your chain will weigh heavy with this night's forging." They convened in a candlelit cabin on the barge while the cinnamon wind took on fresh water. Sam unrolled leaves, produced the new obsidian cylinder, described the memory stream, the tree safe, the heatworm encounter. Marwyn listened, fingers steepled, nodding at intervals. When Sam finished, throat raw, the Archmaester leaned forward. "Do you grasp the hinge you carry, boy? This shard is no mere memory well. It is a seed of the dreaming forge foundation of Valyrian power. With enough such seeds, one might coax dragon eggs to quicken, anoint swords with unquenchable flame, perhaps. His eyes unfocused, bind winter itself beneath a crown of tongues.
Sam shivered.
Then we must guard it. Guard, study, wield, Marwyn corrected. Idle power rots like fruit untasted. Waymar shifted, spear resting across knees. Xanda folded arms. Dernick hummed agreement with Marwyn. Sam met the Archmaester's gaze. Study, yes. Wield only with purpose. He thought of Gilly, of John's burden. We seek to defend, not conquer. Marwyn's grin returned, softer. A scholar's heart beats steady in you. Very well. He produced a pouch of midnight velvet and coaxed the crystal inside. The pouch's embroidery glowed faint, runes anchoring energies. Safe for now. But remember, seeds sprout whether nurtured or neglected. 3 evenings later they dined in the garden courtyard of the House of 1,000,000 Sands, a misnomer for a modest villa outside Carthage's eastern wall. Perfumed lanterns hung in cypress boughs. Night jars trilled. Marwyn unveiled the first translation draft. Sam's glyph sketches now illumined on vellum, annotations in copper ink tracing correspondences to Asshai sigils and Roynish ink charms. Sam's heart leaped. His scribbles transformed into scholarly canon. Conversation circled to next steps. Marwyn proposed sailing for the Isle of Cedars, where rumor spoke of hidden storehouses of Valyrian refugees. Dernick lobbied for Mantaries, where warped descendants of dragonlords still bred misshapen beasts. Xanda favored detour to Volantis for supplies and allies. Waymar simply tapped spear, awaiting command. Sam listened, torn. Each path promised knowledge and danger. But as voices rose, he felt the shards echo inside Velvet Pouch. A heartbeat aligned with his own, and sensed the choice might not be theirs alone. The forge wanted walking. The dream sought dreamers. That night, while others slept, Sam climbed the villa's highest terrace. Stars spilled overhead like powdered diamond. He held the pouch to his chest, closed eyes, and let memory flood. He stood in a vaulted hall of living flame. Around him robed figures chanted, their words weaving columns of fire into the shapes of dragons unborn. A woman stepped forward, tall, silver-haired, eyes burning violet. She looked at Sam as though expecting him. "When the 4th fire falls," she said, voice like echo in cavern, "the chain must break or bind the world." She pressed a hand to his cheek, fire yet cool. "Choose light or shadow, but know both thirst." Sam woke on terrace, sweat-soaked, dawn bleeding orange along desert rim. He rose, limbs trembling, and decided. At breakfast he addressed the company. "We sail to Mantaries," he declared. "Among the twisted there lies truth untempered. If we understand how magic warps flesh, we may learn to mend what winter shall rend." Marwyn's brows shot up, then he laughed. "The Maester commands, so be it." Xanda bowed slight, lips twitching. Waymar nodded once. Dernick clapped. Preparations commenced. Sam penned a long letter to John, sealed with Marwyn's wax, explaining progress and intent. He wrote Gilly too, reassuring her that knowledge grew closer to saving all they loved. He prayed ravens would find their routes swift. Before sunset, the cinnamon wind, freshly rigged, eased her prow east by southeast. Sam stood at rail, watching Karth recede until only pale minarets pierced twilight. Ahead, unseen, lay Mantaries, city where blood of dragons curdled. He feared the horrors rumored within its walls, yet feared inaction more. The shard pulsed faint approval. Sam touched the walnut box, whispered a promise. "We choose light." Night swallowed the horizon, stars flaring bright. Wind filled canvas, and the gentle maester from the wall sailed on, carrying in his satchel words potent enough to turn the tide of centuries, if he learned to read them before they read him.